Hi, partners of commercial fishermen, and thank you so much for being here. I am super excited to say that we are doing a big mental health check today and inviting the incredible maternal mental health specialist, Kate Kripke, who also is the founder of the Postpartum Wellness Center in Boulder, Colorado. I first met Kate through a mastermind that we're in together right now, but I first heard of her back in October when she spoke in a virtual event. And since then, I've followed Kate on podcasts, YouTubes, and also on her Instagram feed. And what really stands out to me is her non-judgmental energy and her relatableness and her true care that she does have for her audience. And it is such a gift. I cannot say it enough to have her on here. So I am going to get her on board right now. And I cannot wait for y'all to meet Kate. Except.
It worked.
Oh, yay.
It's all happening. I'm honored. I love
Thank you
having
for being here,
conversations
Kate.
like
I
this.
cannot
I'm
say.
honored that you asked. I think that your community and what you're doing is so important. And yeah, I did an Instagram live with April yesterday, and I'm like, these new friends doing these new amazing things. It's just really a gift to me to jump on your platform with you. So thank you.
Thank you. It is so inspiring to
Dive
speak with
in.
you and to take advantage of this time with you. I'm going to just dive into the good. All right. We're going strong. We're not holding back here. So, as partners of commercial fishermen, we have a unique lifestyle similar to the military wives. You know, not many people think of their partner dying when they go to work, for example. And with that comes anxiety, overwhelm, depression, you know, a nice little smorgasbord of emotions. I wanted to know if there was a good safety plan or something that we can do to help us when we start to spiral with fear and anxiety.
I've had a varied population of clients over the years, and what's really interesting is that there are clients that I've had and worked with, there are mothers, there are women whose partners really are at legitimate risk for danger because of their jobs, and then there are actually those whose partners are not necessarily at sort of realistic risk and still have those fears, right? And so I want to kind of go back to the source of anxiety, which I think is something that we sort of forget to pay attention to, right? We have productive anxiety and unproductive anxiety, right? Productive anxiety is the anxiety that shows up that sort of leads us to take some sort of action that's within our control, right? So when I think about the women, the folks in your community, you know, there is a real threat to danger for partners. It sounds like that can't be denied. I don't know a whole lot about that career, but I certainly know enough to know, yeah, there's probably some really, logistical dangers out there. And the question for that is to just sort of remind ourselves that there are only two things we can control: our own thoughts, our own actions. That's an important thing to remember. Many of us spin out thinking about and worrying about the things that are out of our control, which sort of, it's like kerosene on a fire, right? Because we feel helpless and we feel trapped and we feel small and we can't do anything about that. There are also thoughts and actions we can take that are within our control, right? Which might look like, you would speak to this more than I do, but might look like, okay, who are my support people I can reach out to when I'm feeling especially worried about my partner on the job? Who are those people who who are safe people I can talk to, I can trust, who I can say, hey, I'm really spinning out right now about my worries and fears, who can reflect back both space to validate those fears, because of course, right? That anxiety makes sense. To feel anxious about something that's actually legitimately scary is a very appropriate feeling to have, right? As long as we're taking care of ourselves. So that someone in your community may do that. Someone in your community may have some sort of a plan with their partner, you know, and we have regular check-ins. Again, I don't know what that looks like, but really thinking through the actions we can take as well as the thinking, right? What is a better feeling thought for me in that moment? If my thinking is all about all the things that could go wrong for my partner, and I actually don't know, that's part of what sounds like it's hard for this community. There are periods of time where you don't have contact. Is that right? You don't know. What our brain does, Megan, which we just want to remember, is in periods of uncertainty, our brain will fill the gaps with the worst case scenario, right? So it's not the uncertainty that's scary and doesn't feel good. It's the thoughts that we put in that space that's scary and doesn't feel good. And so the question is, can you choose a better feeling thought? Yeah. Oh, my partner's fine. We've done this before. All evidence tells us is that my partner's going to be okay, right? So, and then of course that's productive anxiety, right? It motivates us to actually take some action. Unproductive anxiety happens when we're spinning out about things that we literally can't do anything with. And that is really a time, in my personal opinion, that outside support is really helpful, whether that's a therapist or a coach or a good friend. But we have to learn how to kind of really get out of those cycles of stuckness where we're the thoughts build on themselves. We're getting more and more catastrophic. Our feelings are building. We're getting more and more panicky. And that's not a healthy place to be for anybody. And there are many of us who get there. So that was a long answer, but does that make sense?
Yeah. No. Wealth of knowledge. Thank you. That was amazing. And that's a perfect segue into the second question. Well, I'm going to skip down to the third one, is talk about codependency and control issues, because I have a controlling personality, and I recently learned that happens to be a codependent trait, which, you know, as an independent woman, I just don't relate to that. I'm just kidding. But I would love to know more on, you know, what are the faces of codependency? What is, are there things that help and hinder kind of like the anxiety, right? And how do we overcome
that? And I love that you just, I mean, there are so many of us out there who are really pride ourselves in being independent, capable, strong women. I'm imagining a lot of people in your community think of themselves that way, and they kind of have to be, right? They're doing a lot of, they're on their own, so to speak, a lot of the time. For a lot of us, that in some way is it's like we've gone too far in that direction because of our fear that keeps us hooked into people's opinions of us, right? Does that make sense? So overcompensation, that's the word I'm looking for, right? And really what we want in sort of a really sustainable, mentally well, socially well way is to understand that, yeah, I am self-reliant. I really know how to take care of myself. I also don't need other people to be a certain way or do certain things for me to feel the way I want to feel. I know how to bring that feeling up within myself. And I'm influenced by people, and I influence people, and I'm in relationships and connections. So it can't be a denial of that, but it also has to really understand that, you know, what we want for people, what we want for your community is to say, okay, there's a part of me that really does not like the fact that a lot of the time I'm doing this all by myself, and I need my partner to show up these ways so that I feel okay, right? But to say, how do I want to feel? And what are the thoughts and choices that I can take that will lead me towards that feeling, rather than putting all of the emphasis on the other person. Mothers get stuck in codependency a lot with our kids, right? I don't like how I feel when you're messy or upset or throwing a tantrum or not listening. And so I need you to change your behavior so that I feel better, right? And that's an act of codependence. Doesn't mean we have to like their behavior, but for us to be able to tend to ourselves regardless of what our other people in our relationships are doing is really important. And that takes practice. That's hard work. Does that make sense? Does that? Yeah.
Yeah. No, it does. No, it does. It does. Like, I think because people, you know, women and folks in my community, mainly women, it's we're thinking about the now, and we're planning for the future, and we're trying not to think about, you know, the other things.
Oh, wait,
so it's that constant
just
of
a little bit more. So
having to keep everything in place.
You connected this idea of codependency with control, right? And that's like that's a little bit of a different kind of codependency that I just named, which is like, it's a dependency on our environment, not necessarily on the people, but on the environment. Do you know what I mean by that? The environment around me needs to look and function a certain way for me to feel okay. And that is also so important to
Yeah.
recognize when we do that, because we can't actually always control our environment.
Yeah. Yeah.
We can actually control how we respond to our
That's
environment.
true.
That's all in our control, but we can't always control our environment.
And so using the tools that you say, like putting the different thoughts in our head and practicing that way, that's how we were able to come out of that.
Mental and emotional sustainable well-being really requires a capacity for us to sort of go inward and ask ourselves, how am I feeling? And what do I need to take care of what do I need to do to take care of myself in this moment? And that's a lot of nervous system regulation work. Do I need to take a deep breath? Do I need to step outside and feel the sun on my face? Do I need to call and vent to a friend?
Mm-hmm.
Do I need to take a cold shower? Do I need to eat something? Maybe I haven't eaten in forever. Do I need, right, to really be able to say, okay, what does it look like for me to tend to me before I try to fix or change that thing outside of me?
Oh, wow. Amazing.
It's not
okay, I'm just going to let that truth bomb hit.
And especially for many of us in childhood, we're trained to micromanage the things outside of us to feel safe, right? And that might have been true when we were kids, but the reality is that we'll keep chasing. Mm-hmm. We'll keep looking for stability if that's what we're doing, because our environment's always changing, not always within our control. But we can actually learn how to manage our inner world so that we're more resilient to all the things outside of ourselves that are chaotic.
I love that. Thank you so much for that. Okay, we're going on time. I'm just going to go through. I'm going to go through the one that I thought I was going to skip, but we're doing it. And I feel this goes back to our first question anyway, but wanted to get your opinion. One member in our community mentioned that her therapist had her work through her partner's death as a way to overcome her fear of him dying. However, I realize that seems very extreme for a lot of people when I bring this up. But I'm wondering, do we need to learn to let go in that way? Must we literally face that fear and work through like a funeral and what this looks like in order to find
I certainly don't want to step on that therapist's toes. I think there's
peace.
Really valid and important room for that based on the person. I think what we need to do, Megan, is accept the reality of uncertainty. And death is the thing that most of us are the most terrified of for ourselves and other people. By the way, attachment and grief are two sides of the same coin. The more attached we are to someone and something, the more fearful we are of losing that thing. And the more we will grieve when and if that thing is gone, right? And whatever discipline, whatever psychological theory, lots of Eastern philosophies, lots of spiritual philosophies will say that the recipe for well-being is non-attachment, right? So I think in part what that therapist was trying to do, or what some people will really have it will be important for them to do, is to release the attachment to someone coming home. Now, that sounds more severe than I mean it to be, right? Because I don't mean to suggest that I'm fine if you don't come home, right? But the reality is that I'm sitting here in Boulder, Colorado, and my husband is not a fisherman. He could get hit by a car today, right? Most of us, when we make space for that reality, our body tightens up and we get scared and we protect and we think no, and we lean away. But the more I'm willing to accept that truth with compassion and softness, and accept my fear and my dislike of that idea, but the more I'm willing to do that, the less I'm going to obsess about it happening, right? So for me, the idea is, are we ready to accept the reality of uncertainty? And if we're not, we're going to hold on tight to our fears that are connected with the thing that we least want to have happen, right? For some people, it might be a fear of their partner leaving them, like relationship wise, right? For some people, it might be a fear of someone not liking them, right? We have these little losses all the time in our lives. Your example from your community is like a really profoundly visceral example because we're talking about death and dying, and none of us want to talk about death and dying. But it's also the reality. I talk often, first in my personal work, but also in the work I do, is the more I do my own work to become accepting of and less afraid of death, the more less afraid I am to live. And many of us who struggle with anxiety are afraid of living. The idea of living is so scary that we micromanage, right? But is it a fear of death or a fear of life? So it's uncertainty.
Wow. Wow. Okay. I love it. This is so good. Okay. Now, this is kind of a funny segue since it's going from like fear of our husband, like partners dying to like them coming home after not seeing them for a long time and being like, who are you, stranger? I do not relate to you. This feels like this is weird. How in the world do you suggest for an easier transition? Because yeah, I've gone through this. Some years are easier than others. And then, you know, it's the part of like giving ourselves grace to have that weirdness. But
I love this
how would you recommend a couple to reconnect after being
I love it
apart for a while?
Because again, your community is living through a lot of things that most people live through in smaller versions, right? So this example can actually happen when a partner comes home from work at the end of the day. If a woman's home with her children, say, for example, right? Or from a trip. And of course, I'm being a little generic in these examples, right? But these transitions happen all the time. And what we know is that by nature, transitions are bumpy. So the first thing we need to do, and I would encourage your community to do, is to accept the reality of the bumpiness, right? Any transition is going to feel uncomfortable. It's not going to be clear and clean and polished. And I think one of the things that can happen is we're hoping for that, and we're attached to the idea that it will be that. And then our partner comes home, and then, you know, I'm imagining that partners in your community are having their own experience about being away for that long. And so they come home and they overcompensate and they try to jump in there because they feel guilty, right? There's all this, there's so many. And then if there are kids, there's so many dynamics. And so first, we just want to acknowledge that it's going to be chaotic, right? Rather than fighting that and expecting that we can do something to make it not that way. I think inherent in the transition is discomfort. So we allow for that. I do think that there is something that happens in relationships when we don't articulate our expectations to each other. Right. And what I talk a lot in my work about is that there's a big difference between hopes and expectations. When our hopes aren't met, we feel disappointed, which sucks, but we can tolerate disappointment. When our expectations aren't met, along with disappointment, we feel resentment or criticism or shame or guilt or rage, sometimes all kinds of really complicated emotions. And so we want to make sure that we're having those conversations with our partners about, what do you need when you come back from this long trip away? What do I need? How do we support each other? How can we do this together? So that the reunification, the reentry, is a shared process, right? That's been communicated about, rather than each time my partner comes back, we blow up and end up not talking to each other for 3 days or whatever it is. That we're really, your community is really thinking about this. Like, what do I want and need from you when you come back? And can you meet me there? Better to ask that question before your partner comes back than to have that expectation to have it not happen, and vice versa. But I'm curious, I mean, you're in this community. So I'm curious to know for you, if you're willing to say, what does that reentry typically look like? What's the conflict that typically shows up that you're aware
of? Starting from when he gets off the plane. Well, first it's me getting excited that he's coming home, you know, getting the house, all the snacks, getting all cute, and then waiting for him to come off the plane, and it's like, oh yay, and then that magical moment's gone. Then I'm like, oh wow. So, you know, we're both kind of like and he is exhausted. Like, he just wants to go relax and chill. And I want some of that quality time. And so what we've had to learn is we've had to communicate. I'm like, okay, I don't need to take it personal that he wants to Netflix and chill by himself for this many hours. So maybe we can meet for dinner, you know, and like getting over this adjustment period and like not taking it personal was really hard. But I mean, yeah, it gets that way because also, you know, we've had our lives, we've established what's easy for us and what helps us maintain our daily lives at the home. Some of us have children. I do not, but I can imagine just the routines of a mother, and then someone coming in and like having their own rightful opinions on your day-to-day life, on your parenting, on whatever, cleaning the house, you know. It's like, so anyway, I think I kind of went off topic, but yeah, that is the thing. I'm excited and then I'm like weirded out, and then I'm feeling weird, you know, feeling shame,
so
and
many
then
important
having
pieces
to
in
talk
that
myself
example.
into this
And I
as
can
normal.
only imagine. I mean, I can't imagine that there's any partner of a fisherman or fisher person. I guess we say that. Is that what we say? Fisher.
Mm-hmm.
There's no partner of
fisherman
a
works for
fisherman
both.
that
We did a
doesn't
poll.
can't relate to that experience, that, you know, or any partnership where someone's away for a long period of time, right?
Yeah.
And so there's so many interesting parts to this, right? One is like I'm a big advocate for personal responsibility. I talk so much about that in my own feed. What part am I playing in the things that aren't working for me? You know, when I think about when there are two people, each person is 100% responsible for their part. It's not 50-50, it's 200%, right? So what part am I playing in the things that aren't working for me?
Yeah.
And really beginning to think about, this is such a great example. Okay, my partner's coming home. How do I want to feel? And what thoughts and actions can I take that will make it more likely that I feel that way? Versus, how do I want to feel? And what am I expecting from that person that's going to make me feel that way? Right? And I think we all get caught in that thing where we wait for the other person or someone or something outside of us to make us feel the way we want to feel. And again, unpredictability, right? It's like, I don't know, maybe your partner is exhausted. You're expecting him to come off the boat and to run up to you and give you a giant hug and be all enthusiastic, and he hasn't slept in 3 days. And so he sludges out. And then we typically will do that thing. And you said, so beautiful. So you said, I try not to take it personally. And that's the other one, right? Is to remember that other people have their own experience that often has nothing to do with us. There's a really important concept in mental well-being that is hard for a lot of us to sort of land on, which is that there is no one reality and there's no one right and one wrong. So when he comes out of that boat and he's tired and a little grumpy and sort of is a little dismissive of you, that's not a problem. Same with you. When you go there and you expect him and want him to be excited and enthusiastic, and that's not a problem. There's no right and no wrong. There's just two individuals coming to this one moment with their two very different perspectives and experiences and moods, and it's all okay. And when we allow for that and become less attached by what it's supposed to look like, right? If you're like, oh, okay, my partner's coming home and it's going to feel good because it's going to look just like that, right? And then that doesn't happen and we're like deflated, right? But if we take that away and we're like, oh, it can look a million different ways, then we have more access to that feeling that we want. It's the feeling we're looking for. It's not, we're not looking for the hug. We're not looking for the dinner date. We're looking for the feeling that we believe those things are going to give us.
Yeah. Yes. Oh my gosh, so good. And I want to segue saying that you have a book called Reinventing Super Mom, which I'm so excited for my community to know more about. And I'm like, and to segue into the Reinventing Super Mom, I'm going to dive into probably one of the toughest questions I've ever received from my community to see what you think. So this is a quote from a partner in my community. It says, in July, I got pregnant. I miscarried in September, but I want to know how to handle pregnancy and birth alone. I don't have any family near me, and my partner would be home for birth and later at the end of pregnancy. But with a fisherman's schedule and a new baby due soon, they need to be on the water during the first few months of pregnancy. I found this really, really challenging.
It's like,
how do I
when I
handle
read that
pregnancy and
question,
birth
when you first sent
alone?
it to me, my heart hurt, and my heart hurts now as well. And my heart hurts because we're not supposed to do pregnancy and birth alone.
Mm-hmm.
That's actually not, there is not one, you know, we are social and emotional beings. And especially when we go through periods that are scary, and there's no pregnancy and birth without fear. I mean, there's just not. It's amazing and beautiful. It's also uncertain and vulnerable and very scary. And we're not supposed to do those things alone. So the question, when I come with that question, I have two thoughts, right? One is, okay, how do we redefine community and connection for this mom, right? So that the definition of community and connection is not based solely on that partner being there, right? So again, it's a little bit like this. What happens if we take this idea and we move it away? Because that mom actually needs to feel connected and held in order to be well. So my book, Reinventing Super Mom, talks a little bit about this. When I think about mental well-being, I'm really taking into account someone's biology, psychology. Biology is physical body. How healthy am I physically, right? Psychological health. What are my beliefs and thoughts like? How am I regulating my emotions, right? Social health. How connected do I feel? Am I held in community? And spiritual health. Do I have a sense of interconnectedness in my life? If someone is not well enough supported in those areas, they will develop symptoms of depression and anxiety. It's not they might, it's they will. Our society doesn't do a great job of setting women up, setting mothers up to be well supported in those areas, right? Meaning there aren't structures in place already. We have this sense that, well, I'm a competent human and I'm partnered with this other competent human and we can do this together. And then if that other competent human can't be there because of work or is injured or passes away or someone gets divorced or whatever it is, right? We think to ourselves, I'm not okay. I can't do this. And of course, we also know for this particular mom, I'm sure that she understands that there are lots of single moms out there who go on this journey without a partner and probably have similar questions. How do I do this alone? The answer is you don't. You can't. So really thinking about, I have a great exercise I take folks through. I'm happy to send you the little visual for this that you can share with your people. Where we're quote unquote creating a village, right? And it's 3 concentric circles. In the center circle are the people in your life that you can be your most vulnerable with. They're the most intimate people in your life. That means they're the people you can show up, not worried about how you look, not worried about saying how you truly feel. They are your most intimate relationships. We need more than one person in there. So if this mom, if her only person is her partner and her partner's away, that's where I start to sort of worry might be too strong of a feeling, because the fact that this mom is asking this question makes me have a lot of sort of faith in her capacity to reflect and get what she needs, because some people might feel that and never ask the question, but we need at least more than one person in that inner circle, right? These people don't have to be local. They could be on the other side of the world, right? The middle circle are the people in our life who hold us up during the time of, we could do this even if you're not a mom, but I'll speak to the pregnancy and postpartum period, the people that we can really rely on to help support our family. So the people who are, they might be neighbors or friends or colleagues. They may not be the people who are our deepest, most intimate, vulnerable people. We may not show our most true self to these people, but we're going to receive their help. By the way, many of us as women are really good at giving, not so good at receiving. We don't know how to ask for and receive help. And you got to do that when you're having a baby, pregnancy and postpartum. You have to be willing to do that because you can't do it by yourself. You're not supposed to, right? So those people in the middle circle might be your neighbors who are going to check on you when your partner's gone. They might be friends across the country who are pregnant or have babies. They might be support people, professionals. They might be, right? They might be the people who are going to help feed you after your baby is born, or help come walk your dog, or clean out your garage. I don't know, right? The other people who are really holding your family up. And then the outer circle, those are the relationships in your life that you may or may not utilize, the supports you may or may not utilize. So the online groups that you've heard where you can connect with other mothers, right? They might be the professionals that are out there. They might be the books. I'm not a total fan of books. I think they get in the way of our own intuition sometimes, but maybe you're a reader and you want those books. So there are also the supports that you may or may not use, and this becomes your village. And something really important to know about us is that in moments of connection with ourselves, with the people around us and in our environment, our parasympathetic nervous system turns on, rest and digest. In moments of disconnect with ourselves, the people around us and our environment, our sympathetic nervous system turns on, fight, flight, and freeze. So for this mom who asked the question, I would encourage her to think about broadly, who are all the people in your life who you can build, who you already have connections with, and who you can build connections with. So if your partner isn't there during pregnancy or when you give birth or postpartum, that you still feel held in a net of support and connection. That was a lot of information I just shared, but oh, so good.
No, so
good.
And the mom who sent that question is on right now, and so it just very touching. So thank you for that.
I think it really is, I do a lot. The book, Reinventing Super Mom, is really based on that first year postpartum and looking at the biological, psychological, social, and spiritual health, and how do we actually ask for what we need and get for what we need? What are things we can be thinking about to really bolster up those few areas? And I really do think that this one of isolation and disconnect during pregnancy and postpartum is one we have to take very, very seriously. So this mom's concern and question is not only valid, but it's wise, right? So if she's feeling anxious about the idea of being alone, I actually want her to lean into that feeling and to get the wisdom out of it. That feeling is there to tell you that you actually can't be alone during this time, that you're not supposed to be, and that there needs to be some action taken to make sure that you can bolster yourself up. You can't replace your partner. Obviously, there's going to be disappointment and grief about that partner not being there, but let's get out of the all or nothing so that she really feels well supported.
Yeah. I love the point of you making it that it doesn't have to be a physical circle when you build the village. It can be a virtual. It can also be books or podcasts or whatever it is that brings you that value. That's super, because I think for me, I immediately go to the in-person. I'm like, well, it's not in person. And I'm like, that's not even how I operate on a day-to-day basis. So I don't know why there's such a finite concept.
It's not the thing that we want. It's the feeling that we believe we're going to get from the thing, right? I don't mean to suggest that this pregnant person doesn't really want her partner to be there. Of course she does. But what she's wanting is the feeling of safety and security, love that comes with that. Yeah. And we can access that feeling in other ways, right?
Yeah, I love that. And to piggyback on this is another question similar, but I'm going to read it all just so people can have a backstory of what partners of commercial fishermen are going through. So another partner said, I struggled a lot when I had my second baby, and my fisherman had to leave in 5 days to Alaska after the birth. He almost didn't make it in time for the birth. During the following season, I also struggled with being alone, working from home, and taking care of a newborn. What advice do you have for working new
very
mothers?
Similar question. And I can only imagine this happens a lot with your community, whether it's someone who's pregnant or newly postpartum or has older kids, right? And I think parenting alone is really hard. Parenting alone when you also have a job is really hard, right? And of course, they're hard for different reasons, whether you stay at home with your kids or also work outside of the home. And I will just go back to you know, it's so funny. I have this non-pharmaceutical prescription pad that I use with everyone, right? And on this by the way, folks can download
Oh,
a free talk that I give on how to complete this for yourself on my website. So you can go on and just download it and make yourself one of these if you want to. Sleep, nutrition, exercise, movement, hydration, mindfulness, breath,
wonderful.
social connection, nature, play. Those are the things that we know that our brains need to be healthy. And when I think of brain health, I think of cognition, right? How are we thinking clearly, right? Are we accessing executive functioning, right? Our psychology goes into brain health. What are the content of our thoughts and our beliefs, and our emotions? How are we sitting with and integrating and metabolizing and tolerating our emotions, right? Data tells us, science tells us that our brains need all of these things. And so I would just say to that mom, be mindful about how you're feeding your brain. And for someone who's not doing any quote unquote self-care is a really loaded term. And some people who are working moms, especially working moms or even stay-at-home moms who don't have a partner at home, are like, who has time for self-care, right? But it has to be non-negotiable if you want to feel okay. And as we're really talking about building resilience to everyday stress, we have to be doing these things on some level to be resilient to everyday stress. We don't have to go for an hour-long run every day. We don't have to have a 30 to 60-minute meditation practice. So we want to think about baby steps, the most basic things in these areas. And that is my advice to that mom, is to say, yeah, it can feel like you have no time for you, but this is now my work that I'm doing all over the place right now. Is we have to be bringing the spotlight back to ourselves as mothers, because we can't do things well from an empty cup. We know that intellectually, but we need to start believing that, so that we understand, you know, that the 2 minutes that we take outside with the sunshine on our face in the morning is actually in service of our job and our colleagues and our children and our partners, right? We need to shift away from the all or nothing, is it me or them, and say, oh, how am I taking care of myself in service of these things? And that would be my advice to that mom, is to begin to think about, where is she in all of this?
Oh, I love it. Okay. This has been so good, and I want people to know, how can they connect with you, and where can
it's
we
such
drink
a
your
generous
Kool-Aid,
question,
and we want all this
and
stuff.
thank you.
So tell me what you got. We want to
I
know.
have an Instagram feed myself at Kate Kripke, where I am pretty regularly posting things to think about and ideas and strategies and tips. And so people can come find me there. I love actually chatting with people there. So anyone who joins me over there is always welcome to ask questions like this and DM me, and we can start a conversation. My website, katekripke.com, lists all of the programs that I run right now. I have some group coaching that I do. All of my work is around sort of developing sustainable maternal mental well-being. So my clients are all mothers, and that in part is just, you know, I often say to people, yeah, you're my client, but my kid's your client. Because when we help you feel better within your skin, you're actually going to parent better, and your kids get more of what they want and need. So it's sort of that direct connection. But I run coaching groups and programs. I just launched one that I'm in the middle of right now, but there'll be another one launching in March. People can find out about that there. I do some one-on-one coaching. And then I have this book, and then I have a podcast called Motherhood Uncut that I co-host with a dear friend, also mother of teens. I have 2 teenage daughters, and also a therapist. And we bring to the conversation all the junk in motherhood that no one wants to talk about. So lots of these questions we're really digging deep into. And so I always love seeing people over there too.
I love that. It sounds like you
Thank you
offer
for
a
saying
huge
that.
piece of the village that mothers in our community can start building
I
within them.
think we need to remember that we're not supposed to have all the answers ourselves right away. I actually do believe that inside of us we know already, but having the support to move the crap away that's getting in the way from that is really important. So yeah. Oh, I love being here. I'm so honored.
Well, thank you. I mean, I
look
cannot
forward to seeing
thank
you
you enough.
next
Thank you,
week.
Kate.
And let's do more of this, Megan. I appreciate it.
Me too. Would love that. Would love that so much. And I know my community will too. And thank you for everyone who submitted those questions. That was super
Absolutely.
We love you and we're here for
Yeah, I'll
you.
see you
We
soon.
are part of your village.
Bye.
So thank you so much.